why Tai Chi and Qigong are not about health, and why that matters. Let me briefly explain who, in my opinion, Tai Chi and Qigong practices may be interesting for, what you can get from them, and so that you can calmly decide whether you need this or not. Let's start with Tai Chi. First of all, of course, it may seem that Tai Chi is mainly a health practice. That is partly true, but it is not the deepest or most interesting reason, especially for a modern person. If we look at why this practice was originally created, it was actually a combat practice. Tai Chi is a martial technology that allowed people to effectively protect their own lives and the lives of their loved ones. But today, for most modern people, this aspect is almost unnecessary. Of course, it's good to be able to defend yourself, but in general, this is not our main interest. We have other ways to deal with that. So I would start by recommending Tai Chi to those who study and explore the world. Why? Because the Chinese have always been very practical people throughout all centuries. They studied only what produced real, practical results. They were excellent observers and made very interesting observations. By observing reality, they discovered that reality actually operates according to certain algorithms. This is logical. They began to identify these algorithms. One of them is well known to everyone: the balance of opposites. This algorithm exists almost everywhere in nature, both living and non-living, in macro and micro processes. They took these algorithms observed in nature and applied them to practical human activities, including combat. Because properly organized combat cannot avoid the balance of opposites. The reason is simple. Any action we perform requires some amount of resource. Therefore, any technique or practice must first solve the problem of saving resources. A good technology is one that helps reduce energy expenditure in everyday life. The simplest example is when a person simply stops getting tired all the time. Ideally, this goes even further. You learn to regulate the balance between how much resource you spend and how much you receive right in the moment of action. You act, and at the same time, you can adjust this balance so that you spend less and gain more. As a result, you can perform actions for a very long time with minimal fatigue. Of course, there are limits. For example, the physical body has its limits. But without proper technology, people make far more mistakes in this process. You can easily check this in your own life. If you notice that you often feel very tired, the problem is not that you lack energy. The problem is that you don't use it efficiently. In reality, we never have that much energy. But the winner is not the one with more strength, but the one who uses it more skillfully. That is exactly why technique is needed. Tai Chi is a practice that allows you to work with these deep algorithms on which reality itself is built. And yes, all of reality is built on resource economy. Reality is, in a sense, a huge living machine that constantly spends energy and constantly renews it. If this algorithm did not work in nature, everything would have collapsed long ago. But it doesn't. The same thing can be done by mastering Tai Chi. In my opinion, this interest is far deeper than its martial application, although it works there as well. To summarize, Tai Chi is about studying the algorithms by which nature operates and transferring them into your own actions. It means changing the way you act, not only with your body but also with your mind, in order to find a mode of maximum non-fatigue, or more precisely, constant replenishment of your resource during action itself. Something like a perpetual motion machine. Not truly perpetual, unfortunately, but maybe one day. The second reason I strongly recommend Tai Chi is that about 2/3 of our brain is occupied with calculating movement. If a person only moves in everyday ways, walking, standing, sitting, lying down, the brain does not work very seriously on movement calculation because these movements are very simple. This simplicity comes from the fact that in everyday life we do not consciously perceive three-dimensional space. We all know from school that space has 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. But in movement, we usually operate in 2 dimensions, forward, right, left, and so on. We don't notice this because it's enough for everyday life. But the brain suffers from this. The brain is much more complex, and to fully train it, it needs 3-dimensional movement. Tai Chi is one of the few practices that truly works with conscious 3-dimensional movement. I honestly know very few others. Tai Chi trains the brain because it teaches you to perceive the 3-dimensionality of movement and to consciously control 3-dimensional forces through relatively simple motions. This is constant brain training, increasing blood flow and activity. As we age, our resources decline. This is reality. That is why we need additional training, especially for the brain. The body matters too, of course, but if the brain fails, no body will save you. The movements in Tai Chi are actually simple. They feel difficult only because beginners face a contradiction. They are used to linear, simplified movements, and suddenly they are asked to perform simple physical actions in 3 dimensions. There is no gymnastics here, no special physical preparation required. What is required is brain retraining. A person sees that the movement is simple, understands it intellectually, but still cannot do it. The reason is simple. The brain is too accustomed to simplified movement patterns. Over time, this changes. But Tai Chi is not only about movement. First, we learn to control the physical body, then internal forces within the body. Later, this leads to controlling thought itself. Gradually, we arrive at a simple but crucial connection. Thought leads energy. Energy leads movement. Through Tai Chi, we train the brain, thinking, body, and energy to work together harmoniously. And harmony is not an aesthetic concept. It is a state of maximum functionality. Everything becomes simple, efficient, and requires minimal energy. That is the essence of harmony. Over time, the body and brain learn to stay in this mode. As a result, we spend less energy, worry less, experience less stress, and approach problems from a management perspective, not emotional reaction, but restructuring and harmonizing the situation. The third reason to practice Tai Chi is aesthetics. As the saying goes, first of all, it's beautiful. True Tai Chi movement is natural harmony, like watching a panther move, simple, effortless, beautiful. No wasted movement. Tai Chi allows you to cultivate this beauty inside yourself, not as decoration, but as a technical skill that unites beauty and functionality. True aesthetics are the highest level of functionality. This is not mysticism or esoterics. It's simply a type of activity we are not used to. Of course, there is also health. When the brain and body shift into a more economical mode, resources are freed. First, they go toward repairing weak points in the body. This is not a miracle cure, but it is a powerful technological approach to health. With time and understanding, maintenance requires very little effort. Unlike heavy training systems, you don't need endless hours. Once the correct algorithm is learned, you simply maintain the state. Another important reason is balance. Many practices develop one system while damaging others. Tai Chi develops everything gradually and harmoniously. It may seem slow to those who want fast results, but the goal here is not muscle size. It is overall functionality and completeness. Tai Chi is also for those who do not want to age. Aging happens when resources decline and the brain loses flexibility. People simplify reality instead of developing their consciousness. This accelerates degradation. Tai Chi trains the brain to work with complexity and change. This allows people to remain active, aware, and capable even at older ages. Another key idea is the difference between static and dynamic reality. Static thinking relies on instructions and simplifications, but reality is dynamic. Instructions distort reality to make it manageable, but at the cost of truth. Tai Chi teaches you to perceive reality as dynamic, to analyze it, work with it, and manage it in real time, without panic, without haste, but with awareness. This cannot be learned intellectually. The brain must be trained. Tai Chi constantly trains perception of dynamic change. Over time, you no longer need rigid instructions. You stop distorting reality and begin working with it directly. This practice is also ideal for people who enjoy exploring themselves and reality. Tai Chi is an endless source of novelty. It keeps the brain engaged and creative, like continuous improvisation rather than mechanical repetition. This leads to real creativity, not limited to art or profession, but creativity in life itself. You configure reality dynamically, like a musician improvises. Finally, the martial aspect also works. Tai Chi combat is based on harmony, leverage, internal force, and understanding instinctive reactions. It allows you to gain advantage without brute strength. This also applies to communication and influence. Many interactions are contests of consciousness. These are the main categories of people for whom I recommend Tai Chi. I use all of this myself. There are many deeper layers, but that is beyond the scope of an introductory video.